The ACC and the Big 12 are trying to cheat the system and steal Ole Miss's money right beneath their noses. And here's the thing, they're trying to make it legal. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss football staff member as well. We're proud to be a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now it's the number one sports podcast network in America. That's because of you and content like this. And all of those coming together is a wonderful thing. On today's show, we're breaking down the cornerbacks Ole Miss added through the transfer portal and why these top-end additions could reshape one of the most important position rooms heading into the fall. We'll also look at some of the returning competitors and how this battle could define the secondary as a whole. But first, we're going to dive into the growing controversy surrounding the NCAA, the ACC, and the Big 12, and the perception that new governance and revenue proposals could drastically reshape the balance of power in college football, which it absolutely would, but it's a communistic attitude to get there as well. Is this about fairness, financial survival, or positioning against the SEC and the Big Ten? They're just simply tired of those two conferences running everything. Is this all about cheating because you are in danger of being left behind in football? I think so. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is, your team every day. Have your cake and drink it too. Happy birthday, cake. Flavor is back. No fork needed. Vanilla-y, cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon. All right, so something yesterday was very interesting. The SEC and the Big Ten dropped a one-page letter to Congress basically coming out in stiff opposition to the SCORE Act. And you might remember the SCORE Act of how we're going to save women's sports and this is all very important and all that. Apparently, all of that was a Trojan horse designed for the NCAA to consolidate power and to make sure that there's a true power four again by giving the SEC's money and the Big Ten's money to the Big 12 and the ACC. Straight communistic government taking the means of production type situation. And here's the thing, the NCAA and Cody Campbell, who is the big booster at Texas Tech, kind of the Big 12 angle in this, and the ACC, we saw it yesterday. Florida State made $40 million for the year. That's the highest in ACC. They're still $30 million behind Mississippi State. It's unsustainable. So they're trying like heck to get Congress to fix this. And in their eyes, the only way it can be fixed is by taking money away from the SEC and the Big Ten. And how would they do that? Well, part of this hidden thing in the SCORE Act is a change to an act in broadcasting from 1961 that banned the conferences from pooling their broadcast rights together. And what the SCORE Act wants to do is to basically essentially create a CFA, which Georgia and Oklahoma, I believe in like 1984 or something like that, sued to get college football out from under. And they want to pool the resources and have a separate government entity to distribute the money out however they see fit. The fact that nobody is saying, hey, what are y'all serious? Is this the real thing? Tells you which direction it is coming from. The SEC and the Big Ten will not take part in this. They absolutely will not. Both of them have major TV partners. Both of them could separate from what they're doing, create a 40-team college football league, and nobody would think that it was a lesser brand of football than whatever Colorado State's doing. The Big Ten and the ACC are trying to get a slice of that pie from the SEC and the Big Ten for themselves, so they can make it more equitable in the amount of money. They say it's in the name of parity. I say it's in the name of charity, essentially. You want to be good because everybody else is good, but you've done nothing yourself to get there. You have been left behind by the market. It happens. Telegraph workers, telephone workers, all of those guys were left behind by technology. Things change. And what we have at the moment is a situation where there is a true power two in college football, and there's zero rules. And they are trying to take the chaos surrounding college football and make it to where a communistic system is brought in there. Now, don't get me wrong. Americans love socialism in sports, the draft, all of that stuff. They love parity. But in this situation, it would literally be a United States government organization deciding the means of productions. It would be incredibly communistic. The SEC and the Big Ten over the last 20 years have separated. They have. And after the conference realignment and all of that, they basically became a new entity themselves. But they are still willing to play ball at the NCAA to help out, just by their names being attached to it, the value that the NCAA has. You tell me that there's a world where Clemson and Florida State and Texas Tech and BYU are the leaders inside the NCAA and they would get the same amount of eyeballs? To me, that would be no different than South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Montana, and all that in FCS. It is what it is. But Texas and Oklahoma and Michigan and Ohio State and those huge brands surrounding college football prop up the entire sport. And now you want a financial incentive based off of that fact for you because it just isn't enough that they're propping up you a little bit. They want the rest of it as well. And everybody's going to say, hey, Ole Miss has been the beneficiary of joining the SEC. Yes, the best decision anybody ever made was in 1931 or 32 when that person from Ole Miss said, hey, we need to join the Southeastern Conference. But Ole Miss did join the Southeastern Conference, and they're there. And they were a part of this growth that has happened over the last, 60, 70 years, from provincial league to dominant superpower of college football. The Big Ten, they wavered a little bit, but it's all ups and downs. These are all reputations that have been earned. The Big Ten, for anyhow you want to look at it, cannibalized the best of the Pac-12. The SEC took Oklahoma and Texas, along with Texas A&M and Missouri, increasing the value of their product. You are not entitled to the money surrounding those group of teams in any way. You're not in those leagues. You are not entitled to what's going on. And no, we don't need to grow the game with college football. We need college football to be exactly what it is. We don't need Texas Tech to be the dominant force in college football because somebody thinks that they're a billionaire and they have an empirical right to make that happen. We don't need that. If you set your mind to it and do what needs to be done, you have a chance to rise up from your bootstraps in this most American of systems that we have in college football right now. It's completely a land of opportunity if you're willing to take it. Ole Miss struggled mightily. They beat Alabama last decade a couple of times, went on probation and all that. They came back and became a dominant force in college football before making a college football semifinal run that ended with them being 19 seconds away from the college football national championship. The University of Mississippi, Ole Miss did that. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. The revenue, everything that's going on, I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. You don't have a right to Ole Miss's money because you're in a bad situation. This is not conference welfare we're dealing with here. This is not a situation to where the Big 12 needs to be put on food stamps. This isn't that. The SEC and the Big 10 have built college football in this country. Everybody else has been along for the ride, and that is about it. You are not entitled to their money. You are not entitled to their TV time. You are not entitled to anything that you haven't built. And that should have been the most important American ideals in this whole thing. We are not going to create a communist system in order for you to steal the money from the people that make the money. That's just the way this works. If it happens, if for some reason that goes through, within minutes, the SEC and the Big Ten would leave the NCAA. That is how much they think you're not entitled to their money. And for instance, one of the big dogs last year in the Big 12 came through and said, we're going to be a big dog and we're going to compete. They went to Starkville, Mississippi, played the worst or second worst team in the Southeastern Conference. Their all-world quarterback was held to 82 yards in that game, in a game that they ultimately lost against one of the last place teams in that conference. Big 12, ACC, sorry, so sorry, not sorry, but you're not entitled to a single dime. And that's all I really have to say about that. Anyway, the Rebels return plenty at cornerback, but a reshuffle is coming. How will Ole Miss handle it? That's coming up next. Welcome to the 5-hour energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, and cotton candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5-hour energy flavor draft. Listen, we're going to debate grape. We're going to debate berry. Confetti craze might be in there as well. Maybe pomegranate, something like that. Whenever you deal with flavors for 5-hour energy, I've always found that I like the originals, the OGs. Grape and berry are fantastic. And there's a sweetness to them without the sugary kick for that as well. Listen, I like the fact that it's available everywhere. Anywhere you get your 5-hour energy in drugstores and convenience stores nationwide, you can pick up a berry and a grape. Just availability makes them the number one to me. I think, though, I'm drafting cherry number one. And I love cherry flavor. It's one of my favorite things. I get a cherry icy, cherry bubblegum, the whole 9 yards. I like cherry flavor, so cherry 5-hour energy would obviously be the number one pick. The sleeper would probably be pomegranate. There's a tanginess to that pomegranate taste that you can deal with, and obviously they have confetti craze, fruity rainbow, and cotton candy. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, if grape is your thing, just go back and try grape again, because that would be fantastic as well. Remember, 5-hour energy shots give you a boost with 0 sugar. Find your new flavor of 5-hour energy shots available online at 5-hour energy or Amazon. The biggest stretch of college basketball season is almost here. Buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and those unforgettable moments that everyone's talking about the next day. Being there live for something like that, well, that's bucket list type stuff. The hard part is actually getting tickets, long queues, prices jumping around, and the surprise fees that happen at checkout. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experience in just a few taps. It's incredibly simple to use, and the Game Time guarantee means that 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. And here's the best part. The fees are baked into the price you see. What you see is what you pay, period. The seat feature is a game changer. You can see a panoramic view from the exact seat you're sitting in before you buy. No stress, no guesswork, just smooth experience from start to finish. That's exactly what you want during the busiest part of the season. So let's take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Hey, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs nothing, but it keeps everything free. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Ole Miss, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. An invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I'm in there from time to time as well. And if you join that and go in there, I will give you an invite to the Locked On Ole Miss Discord server as well. You also get special all-access episodes of Locked On Ole Miss from Coach Corey Burton doing film breakdowns, Mike Huseman, who I think right now has a top quarterback and running back combination in America. He's kind of our national perspective that we do in there as well. And then Dalen Flowers is around Oxford, Mississippi, putting out all sorts of great content. Go to lockedonolemist.supercast.com or check out the link down in the show notes to learn more. All right, so let's talk about the cornerback position today. And this is pretty interesting because this is the larger room. Whenever you look at only 2 cornerback positions, maybe a slot corner, depending on how you look at the 5th defensive back, there's 2, maybe 3 positions that Ole Miss has. Ole Miss is returning quite a bit off of that unit, and a lot of that has to do with Cedric Beavers getting a chance to come back after his Jones County junior college days. But there's a couple of players that are really interested that contributed a large amount over the season, and that was Jalen Braxton and Antonio Kite. They played a good bit. At the end of the year, they were the starting 1 and the starting 2 cornerbacks. I know that Jalen Braxton, he got tried out at safety, and I think he's going to get tried out again. That's my hot take there. But Antonio Kite was the #1 defensive back on the team. He's going to fight to be the #2 or #3 defensive back on this year's team. That gives you an example of how this team has stepped up. Cedric Beavers could end up going back to safety as well. Remember, with Pete Golding, he is not afraid to take a cornerback and make them into a safety. He did the same thing with John Saunders as well. So we'll see. Tafoy Fegan from Clemson is also there. He redshirted last year, I do believe. He transferred into Ole Miss at the very end in the summer transfer, like the Trinidad Chambliss window. Fegan is somebody that is going to battle for some playing time as well. And then there's the underclassman that's coming up through the system. Mason Dunn is a 6'4" corner that is definitely worth paying attention to for the future. Pat Broomfield, if you remember, he was on this podcast a little bit early on in his recruitment, said he wanted to find out if the NFL was fake or not. That's when that was going on, like it was a scripted thing. And Dante Core was one of the players that unfortunately got shot, but he had a really good fall camp last year and was very close to getting on the field. I expect Dante Core will make a little bit of a run. All of these players, with the exception of Cedric Beavers, are over 6 foot. Cedric Beavers is 5'11", so that tells you what goes on the recruiting side of things. The signees, Dorian Barney got signed by Ole Miss. He's somebody that picked Ole Miss, I think, over Michigan. He is a really good player. He's out of Georgia. He is somebody to pay attention to for early playing time because he can do some pretty special stuff. And then Iverson McCoy and Braylon Williams, both 3-star guys from Tupelo, they signed as well at the cornerback position. You can see that's 10 different players that are returning for a unit that only 2 or 3 players can be on the field at the same time. That is one of the reasons I think that Pete Golding is going to give a serious look to especially Jalen Braxton going back to free safety and using Edwin Joseph at strong safety or Jonel Aguirre. It's interesting the depth that they have brought in. And it isn't just there. The transfer portal, Ole Miss attacked the portal and they may have signed the best corner available. Is this secondary officially reloaded? We will talk about that next. Coast Pay is giving Locked On College listeners up to $2,000 credit for your business when you get started today. If you manage a crew, construction, HVAC, landscaping, any operation with trucks on the road, you already know how messy gas and material spending can get. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, and month end turns into a headache. Coast Pay fixes all of that. Coast Pay is the modern fuel card expense management tool built specifically for fleets. Fuel, maintenance, material, it's all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens. No surprises. If somebody fuels up at an odd time or tries to buy something outside your limit, you'll know about it instantly. You get real-time alerts, so you always know who's spending what and where. Automatic receipt capture that makes the month end simple. Fraud protection with employee check-ins by text, no shared pins. Works anywhere that Visa is accepted, no detours to specific stations. It's built for operators who don't have time to chase paperwork. And unlike old fuel cards, there's no contracts or commitments, just smarter expense control. Right now, Coast Pay is offering our listeners up to a $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastpay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to $2,000 credit. Terms apply. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts are subject to credit approval. All right, couple of players that Ole Miss got. Ole Miss won the transfer portal when it comes to cornerback because I think they got the best available one in Jay Crawford from Auburn. He is somebody, when you talk to Zach Blackerby at Locked On Auburn, he mentioned he was his favorite player. He was that good. He locked down a whole side of the field. He honestly sounded a whole lot like Trey Amos did a year before at Ole Miss. So Ole Miss went into the transfer portal and grabbed themselves a Trey Amos level cornerback. I'm interested to see what this looks like because we're going to talk about this a whole lot on Monday when we get into the safety talk of what's going on. But Ole Miss had trouble playing man coverage from time to time a year ago. Now, they do a lot of the matchup principles and all of that stuff. I'm talking about straight man coverage where you line up and you bump and run whoever's at the line of scrimmage, and you try to send blitzers so there's less time for the quarterback, all of that. The traditional bump and run man defense Ole Miss was unable to do a year ago. And that wasn't because of Braxton and Antonio Kite, by the way. The safety position was not quite up to par. They made plays and they tried their hardest and they did their best to put a Band-Aid on the situation. They just couldn't do it. So I think with the addition of Jay Crawford, that locks down half the field. Antonio Kite fighting for the number 2 cornerback is going to be a big deal. And Ole Miss got Shareef Denson also from Florida, who is somebody that you can line up in the slot. So I think Jalen Braxton may end up at free safety next season. We will talk about all of that stuff. I think these starting cornerbacks, you're going to have Jay Crawford, that's a lockdown, and you're going to have Antonio Kite on the outside, and you're going to put Shareef Denson on the slot or Jonel Aguero at the slot as well. I think they're going to use that slot corner as a means to dictate to the offense what is going on. If a team is playing bigger, if they're lining up in 12 and 13 personnel to where there's extra gaps being created, I think that Denson's going to be taken off the field and like somebody like Aguero is going to be put on it. The safeties going to line up back. I think Edward Joseph is going to end up starting there, and you have the younger guys. But when you look at Denson, when you look at Crawford, that is talent that has been added on top of what you already had. We've gone over all the players. They were problematic and they had things they struggled with a year ago, but they have reconstructed the secondary. When you add Jay Crawford, that allows you to move Antonio Kite to the second cornerback. So all of a sudden your cornerbacks are well taken care of. And somebody that played a lot of cornerback could end up back at free safety. Now, It could be somebody like O'Darian Carty or something like that. We're going to talk about that on Monday. But you could have a situation where, once again, there's 3 cornerbacks on the field, and then you have Joseph and all of that. So we'll see how it looks. They have the talent and potentially the physicality to get it done. But I am really excited. And if you've watched more than probably 3 of my podcasts over the last month, I've mentioned Jay Crawford. That is how excited I am for Jay Crawford. I think that in 2024, that defense was so good in large part because of Trey Amos. I think Jay Crawford is going to do the same thing, and that is going to allow the defense to be called differently. You add the double teams that we always talk about on the defensive line, and all of a sudden those ends get a direct path to the quarterback. Less time to throw the ball, smaller windows is going to result in more sacks, more lost yardage plays, more turnovers by the other team. That's essentially what the Ole Miss cornerbacks bring to the table this year. A more attack-worthy defense that dictates as opposed to receives what's going on in the ballgame. If you can do that, you're going to be all right. Traditionally, you're going to be all right. We talked about the linebackers, defensive line, all that. This defense has a chance to be elite. And a lot of that has to do with Jay Crawford. Understanding what that player does for what you're doing, whenever you can just put him on the other team's best receiver and just forget about it. And Antonio Kite, who's excellent in coverage on the other side, there's not many holes when it comes to the defense and ways to attack. I bet the bust go down. I bet a lot of stuff happens in the secondary that makes the front 7 be the front 7 that we thought they could be. And in the Sugar Bowl, they were, if you think about it. So we'll see exactly how that looks as well. Thanks for tuning in today to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to continue to talk about Ole Miss football and spring practice all week. Make sure you subscribe and follow the show so you get all the latest episodes. We're on all the social channels as well, so check that out. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonolemmiss.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we're going to send you on over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. We're getting closer to spring practice. Should be a lot of fun. Hotty toddy, everybody. We will see you Monday.